let me briefly introduce our two keynote speakers for this morning plenary session. I'm very delighted to welcome Professor Ada Peter. Professor Ada Peter is Professor of Digital Infrastructures and International Security at College University in Nigeria. She has been the project coordinator and lead conceptual architect of the French program funded by the Agence Française de Développement, French Agencies for Development, which is a program of excellence in Africa and funded by work with the partnership in French government. She's a national cybersecurity strategy expert, and she's as well the co-founder of Ribera, where this is the motto: we're building Ribera to be the visible infrastructure behind global employability, which is a next generation employability and education data platform now deployed across universities in Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya. Please, Professor Ada Peter, so to the floor, and I will at the same time briefly introduce Professor Frédéric Fleury, which is a professor at Agilities, which is the counselor of for the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Space in France. Professor Frédéric Fleury is a former president of Claude Bernard University. He has been previously vice president in charge of real estate essays and director of the biology department at the Faculty of Science and Technology.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, the representative from the embassy. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for coming. So in the next 15 minutes, I will be setting the ball rolling for what to expect in the course of this 3-day conference. But allow me to acknowledge everyone here, and let me say bonjour. Did I say that properly? And salam. Is that how it's said? Excellent. Welcome to all of you. To what I believe will be the most important conversation, or one of the most important conversations around African higher education in 2026. First, we're grateful to Addis Ababa for having us. You know, you're having us. I'm from Nigeria. I have my colleague from Kenya. I have my colleague from Senegal, and then my other colleagues from France. Thank you for having us. It's been a hospitable welcome. Thank you. You want to applaud yourselves, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. But most especially, I want to thank you for being here. Why? Because it's a signal. It's a signal that you believe that this conversation is important. The questions that we're going to be asking is very critical to answer. And that the answers that we're going to generate are things you're going to work on going forward. We're actually not here to provide, answers, but we're here to work together to come up with those answers. And so the very critical question that I would like to start off with this morning is, what really is autonomy-centered internationalization? What is it? I want you to hold that question. Hold it, because it's very important. It might sound very academic in this position, but it's actually the most practical question any university leader may want to answer this morning. What does it really mean? I hear there's a lot of autonomy-driven efforts within Ethiopia, and one of the critical aspects will be internationalization. But it's important that as we drive towards internationalization, we want to do it right. We want to do it well. We want to do it not the way it's always been done, because there's something fundamentally wrong with the way it's always been done. And so I appreciate the France Education International for this initiative, so that as the Ethiopian government drives towards its internationalization, it's doing it in the right way that's suitable for the future we're building, not the past we're coming from. And of course, my colleague, Frédéric Fleury, will talk us through the different frameworks. And what I'll do in the next 12 minutes is to set the stage, not to lecture us, but to provoke us to think deeply. My colleague will set the stage. I'm just here to provoke us to think deeply. Why are we here? So 30 years ago, the promise of internationalization was luminous. It was beautiful. It was excellent. What was it really all about? If we were talking about internationalization 30 years ago, it was about open borders, cross-pollination of ideas, students and faculty going from Nigeria to France, to the United States, the United Kingdom, circulating ideas around the globe, building the knowledge economy for the 21st century. It was beautiful. And it was an exciting vision. And to a degree, that vision was realized. But here's the uncomfortable truth. I call it uncomfortable because, of course, it's pretty uncomfortable. Because, when you think about it around strategic planning, the documents will never say it out loud. And what's that uncomfortable truth? Internationalization, as we had it, or as most institutions currently have it on the continent, is largely serving someone else's agenda, not an African agenda. Do you agree? Anyways, I'll break it down in a minute. So when we think about internationalization, before now, we think about ranking bodies, without mentioning names. The rank universities, the top this. Or if you don't fall in within these metrics, you are not international per se. Okay? But these metrics were not designed with you in mind. It was designed far away from the continent. We have accreditation frameworks built around assumptions that many of our faculty members and students don't even have an idea about. They were not involved in it, okay? And then we also have mobility schemes. Oh, you have to go from Nigeria to America based on the donor's priorities, right? Not your national development goals. I don't think that's the internationalization we want to drive at. Or is that? Is that? Anyways, I do not say this to condemn history in any way at all. I say it because the first step, towards a different future is an honest account of the present. We must first, account for what's going on right now. And the one question that this slide carries is, who controls the future of your institution's global agenda? Ethiopian institutions have a global agenda, but the question is, who controls the future of that global agenda? And that's why I think it's important to show us why the former model is broken. It's important to let us see that the former model is actually broken. And the first structural failure of that former model is what I call dependency without strategy. Dependency without strategy. Many of our institutions have built their entire international portfolio around logic of rankings, recruiting international students, recruiting international faculty, and that's what makes you international. Maybe not. You shouldn't do this without a pedagogical vision for your institution. It shouldn't just be about, we have 200 international students. We have 50 international faculty members. But the question is there a pedagogical vision for bringing in these international students and this international faculty? The moment ranking bodies shift, and why many institutions do this is because the ranking says, the ratio of your institution faculty members must be 1 to 4. Not because there is something concrete on the listics. So the moment that ranking changes, it looks like all of your efforts before now goes into limbo. That's the first failure. Dependency without strategy. There's nothing wrong in getting international students. There's nothing wrong in getting international faculty, but it must be embedded within a strategy that favors the country. Second failure is the curricula. The curricula is largely shaped by foreign frameworks. Nothing wrong with it, but the point is, when these degree programs are calibrated by international, organizations that don't take in your local needs into cognizance, it becomes something, troublesome or something problematic. That is not internationalization. That is simply cultural substitution dressed as, in academic language. And then the third failure is one that will define, the next decade. The third failure will define the next decade, and Ethiopia would not be found there. And what's that failure? The outsourcing of your data and digital sovereignty. As we internationalize as a country, you do not want to outsource your data and your digital sovereignty. Why? Think about it. Your student data flowing into platforms governed by foreign laws. Research outputs published in journals whose entire business model requires you, first, you pay to publish, then you pay to access your published works. Have you seen that? We need to think critically about, and these are the questions we're going to be asking in our breakout sessions and coming up with answers. And so what are the 4 frameworks we'll be introducing to you in the course of this workshop, of this conference? There are 4 frameworks. The first is institutional autonomy. When you internationalize, you need to think about institutional autonomy. The question for vice chancellors, deans, directors, heads of department will be, who holds the decision-making power of your international partnerships? If you want to enter into a partnership with Harvard, with Stanford, who holds the power? So that is in the institutional partnership. Do you have genuine capacity to say no to MIT? Or not just diplomatically or in theory, can you actually say no? Because what MIT is bringing to the table is not in tandem with what Ethiopia is pursuing. That's talking about institutional autonomy. And the second is auricular autonomy. Who decides what's taught? Who decides what you teach in your classroom, right? In what language? And then it also means is that your students will have to start learning how to reflect the varieties of your society, because you need to own your curriculum. And then the third around here is what I call digital and data sovereignty. Again, it's the future. We have AI, we have everything. We're not going to go back into that circle again. Okay, sovereignty and control over your research, over your student data, over the platforms, the LMS you're using. Who owns it? You upload your students' data, their email and everything. Who owns it? Where is it stored? Is it in Africa? Or is it somewhere else, miles away? And then finally is strategic autonomy, the capacity to build international presence that does not collapse when funding disappears. So you're in partnership with a university abroad, or you have a donor abroad, and the moment that donor money starts coming, does your institution collapse? Does your, teaching quality collapse? Those are critical questions we'll be dealing with in the next 3 days. And so I encourage you to join sessions that are very intriguing for you. Why? Because we need to move from principle to practice. Principle to practice, and what do I mean by that? We need to move from rankings, we're the top 100 in the world, to societal impact, to national development goals as our North Star. The North Star shouldn't be, I'm ranked 100. But even if you're ranked 100, the question should be, it's not one that asks you where you're ranked. It should be, who do I serve and how well do I serve them? Yes, you're ranked 100, but who do you serve and how well do you serve them? The second is moving from mobility as an end in itself. All our students, 500 of our students have gone to Paris. We've exported students. The prestige is important, I agree. But the question is, did they come back? And when they came back, what difference did they make? That should be the next North Star, not the fact that they went. Going is a good thing, but did they come back? And when they came back, what did they come back with? And then the third is we need to shift from partnerships defined by the stronger partners agenda to partnerships defined by mutual autonomy clauses. Second, mutual autonomy clauses. We're in partnership. When I had the privilege to serve as Vice President, International Affairs, one underlying factor in every international partnership we had was reciprocity. If you're asking me to send 200 students, are you willing to send 200 students to Nigeria? And so, and trust me, each time that question came up, there was a pause, and then there was a response. Okay, yeah, we can send them, but how about the security issues? I'm like, well, every country has security issues, but I can assure you that that campus is very safe. So it's for us to really, create a level playground and think about reciprocity. And then finally, the third is what I call moving from partnership, of course, moving from partnership defined by, stronger, partners agenda. And why are we in Ethiopia? Why now? Why Ethiopia? Ethiopia is very pivotal in Africa, as you already know. Ethiopia currently has about 50 public universities in 2 decades. And that's the most remarkable, expansion of higher education access in modern history. The choices we're making in this room today, it's not for just today. It's the choices that will shape the next 30 years. The architecture of internationalization that we're laid here today will determine the rule for you to maneuver so that when the next university from North America, from Europe, even from Africa, when that university shows up, you have the right tools, the right questions to ask, the things to tick off, the things to say, well, on this note, this is what we think should be happening. And of course, this is not only an Ethiopian story. The African Union's continental education strategy explicitly frames autonomy and self-determination as core principles. African institutions are not starting from zero. They are reclaiming a tradition of intellectual independence that predicates most of the frameworks, and this continent has been producing knowledge. We're not just starting to produce knowledge, for the millennia. What is new is not capacity. Rather, it's on us insisting on governing that capacity on our own terms. France Education International's commitment to this region is not technical assistance, I must say, in the traditional sense. Rather, they have not come with answers. No. They have not come, to push stakes down our throats. No. They have come with methodology. They have come to help you learn. They have come to bring, strategic, decisions that we have to take, okay? The decisions belong to us. They are here to support our work. It's left for us to decide what we want to do with it. And so in the next 3 days, you have day 1, defining the problem, which is what we're doing today. Day 2, designing the new models. And then day 3, building a coalition of international institutions. Allow me at this time, before I hand over to my colleague, Frederic, the question you need to take away from this table today is not whether to engage with the world. What we're advocating is not for us to become isolated from the world. No. What we're saying is whether that engagement strengthens or erodes our capacity to decide for ourselves as institutions. Allow me, please, to invite Frederic to take us further into this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ada-Peter, to set the tone for this 3-day conference. Let me just tell you that with the agenda, you have a workbook, which will be useful for you during all the breakout sessions. It's with the agenda. And now I need the floor to Hadissa Babi.
Thank you. Juriki, can you hear me? Then I follow and Ada-Peter gave you the framework and the objectives of these 3-day institutions. And I will now provide a brief overview of university internationalizations with a world view. I focus on the general aspect and the overall approach, drawing on reports from international organizations and my own experience as former president of a French university and actors of the European Alliance Initiative for European Collaboration between all countries of Europe. My view is shaped by governance, experience, more than theoretical and practical aspects. Before we begin, I would like to thank you all for your participations or this 3-day. Thanks Ethiopian authorities and the French embassy, which facilitate our programs and preparation of these missions. Thank you also the teams of Reforestation International and Fatou, which helped you to organize this meeting. Then, as Ada said, what is autonomy-centered internationalization? My presentation will focus 9 points that I believe to be important to address. We will only briefly touch upon this point, and we can return to it during the discussions. This issue will be further developed through other presentations and examined in more detail during breakout sessions in the afternoon. To start, here in the slide, we see 3 key figures of the UNESCO reports, which just has been published a few days ago. First, the number of students enrolled in higher education worldwide has increased about 100 millions in 2000 to 269 millions in 2024, almost a tripling. The second figure, the number of students going abroad has more than tripled over the past 2 decades, from 2.1 millions in 2000 to nearly 7.3 millions in 2023. Yet mobility benefits only 3% of students, with significant regional disparities. The third figure is government investments in higher educations average about 0.8% of gross domestic product globally. Whilst fiscal tightening in many contexts is intensifying the strain of higher education institutions. We are therefore facing to a huge challenge. Most students with no more one. I have to check. Yes. How do you view the 4-dimension for autonomy? It's quite similar, but with differences when we look at the criteria, European criteria autonomy. European University Associations about internationalizations. Last year we came in Ethiopia for a first meeting and we discussed about academic and organizational autonomy on your university and it is measured in Europe by EU. You have the 4 pillars. It's organizational autonomy, financial autonomy, staffing, HR autonomy, and of course academic autonomy, where we have digital autonomy and student mobility. In turnout, but many of these key criteria highlight in red on the slide, the red where are the directed level for developing internationalizations of university. When you can see that lots of criteria are directly linked to internationalization. For example, within academic autonomy, the ability to choose the language of teaching is linked to internationalizations. Or within organizational autonomy, the ability to create legal entities within university, such as branch campuses or motion tools for internationalizations. And traditional models of internationalizations relies on a limited number of criteria that are no longer sufficient. They mostly target student mobility as I said you before, as the main indicators. This model no longer reflects the current realities of global higher education approach, which need new criteria. Internationalization at home with digital technology, for example. Curriculum reforms, digital transition and collaborations, intercultural competence and skills, and global society challenge such as climate change, numerical digital transitions. This new paradigm of internationalizations, which develops a systematic, global, and multidimensional approach, was proposed nearly 30 years ago, and subsequently ratifying several times. James Knight gave the following definitions of internationalizations on a global point of view: the process of integrating an international, intercultural, and global dimension into the corporate functions and the cellular of higher educations. Hans de Witt and colleagues later enrich and expand the definition into a broader models that better represents all the current change of internationalizations. In these new definitions of the Witt, the key terms are intentional process. Intentional process means that the university must develop a comprehensive international strategy that consistently permeates all sectors of a university, all dimensions. Another key word is education and research, because the two missions are closely linked and must be considered together in internationalizations. And the third word, contribution to a society, because teaching and research must address global society issues such as global health, environmental preservation and biodiversity, social equity, inclusions, and technological transitions. Then, internationalizations cannot remain an opportunity for few, only 3% of students worldwide, but must become a learning experience for all students and staff of higher education institutions. It's a challenge. This slide shows the themes addressed and the number of areas involved in each state. Sorry. Shift toward comprehensive internationalizations with these new visions can be represented by a graph, but highlight a university two-dimensional transformations, both through its internal and external actions and through its openness to societal challenge, compared to the traditional academic position. You can show the different points from academic to societal impact, and international to external, and external missions of a university, and different subjects that university must face to. Comprehensive internationalization is therefore a global transformation. It integrates all university missions and activities. It is a strategic and systemic approach. Just an example for that. We try to do that and to go in these directions in Europe with a European Alliance initiative. European universities are example of these new internationalizations with well-defined strategy, partnership choice, and thematic priorities focused on societal change. European Alliance was launched 10 years ago at the initiative of France. There are now 65 alliances of 7 to 9 universities, each involving 35 countries and 560 universities. About 11 million of students are involved when we take into account all these alliances. The 65 alliances have developed student and staff mobility, create joint degree, work together on a European degree, micro-credentials, and develop research collaborations. Each alliance of European university also is structured around central living teams that leverage the expertise of each member to address the most pressing political challenge of This slide shows the teams addressed and the number of alliances involved in each team. We can see that environment and sustainable development, as well as digital transformations, are the most frequently chosen themes by alliance. And you have other themes, of course, like urban and regional development, social sciences, humanities, economics development. It means that university works together to tackle the main questions of these things. As we have seen, autonomy and internationalizations are strongly linked, but they reinforce each other through the implementations of their actions, which foster a virtuous cycle. Autonomy facilitates international strategy, and internationalizations strengthen autonomy. For example, developing international partnerships allows for better performance in academic activities and thus enables more successful applications for competitive funding, resulting in greater financial autonomy and therefore more resources for developing partnerships and internationalizations. And you have clearly a virtuous cycle to that. The global internationalizations of universities made them marginal players in international relations between states, in public policy related to society issues, and in global knowledge cooperations. Higher education institutions are therefore an essential actors in scientific diplomacy between states, which aims to mobilize scientific knowledge collaborations and institutions to support international relations and address global challenges. The definition of scientific diplomacy adopted by the Royal Society of American Associations is the use of scientific collaborations among nations to address common problems and build constructive international partnerships. From a national perspective, science diplomacy may be viewed as a dynamic articulation between three stakeholders: higher education institutions, of course, with their international strategy, state and its national public policies, and supranational organizations within broader frameworks shaped by international actors and transnational networks addressing common global challenges. Organizations such as OECD, UNESCO, the World Bank, and the International Association of Universities, together with regional bodies such as the European University Association in Europe or Association of African University in Africa, produce a strategic guidance that influence public policy and support internationalization strategy of higher education institutions. Conversely, universities also contribute through their expertise and experiences to shaping the reflections and orientations of these mobilizations. These tripartite relationships may sometimes become a source of tension, particularly between autonomous university and the policy orientations of their supervising minister. Higher education institutions increasingly define independent international strategy that do not always fully match with national priorities or diplomatic commitment. Such a divergence may create challenge in accessing funding and generate inconsistencies between higher institution strategy and the policy expectations of public authorities. Ideally, the international strategy developed autonomously of higher education institutions while taking into account national and supranational policy frameworks should contribute to and support the broader national strategy. Then, I would say that university contribute through their expertise and experiences to shaping the reflections and orientations of this supranational organization. When it is in both sides, but information exchange. We are creating other side of it. Another point is student mobility asymmetry. Anna spoke before about these important questions. How to manage it? This issue can be a source of conflict and an obstacle to international partnership in this asymmetry. This roadmap clearly shows that student flows are not that, particularly in North Africa and Europe, and with clear north-south asymmetry. This raised different questions for institutions depending on the economic models of a university and the policy of the host country. For example, the cost of training students, tuition fees in a host country when the fees would be low, or the risk of a brain drain in country where outgoing mobility is in control. That's what Ada said it before. Then how to manage it? This asymmetry between incoming and outgoing students' mobility can be accepted, managed, mitigated through various instruments available to higher education institutions. This issue will be explored in more detail further in discussions, mainly in outbreak session 201. For example, balanced mobility evidence and digital internationalization tools, particularly within the framework of internationalization at home, may help overcome some of the difficulties. And you have different solutions and tools that get used to balance this asymmetry of student mobility. However, as student mobility represents only one dimension of contemporary models of adaptation, it is ultimately up to each institution within a framework of its autonomy to define its broader international strategy and determine how to address these questions of student mobility. Now, I would like to briefly share with you a recent study published by the International Association of Universities in 2023. These studies outline the trends in university internationalizations and demonstrates how these new comprehensive models can be implemented and what are its key drivers. These studies covers more than 700 institutions, i.e. educational institutions, out of the 20,000 institutions worldwide. It's 1 to 3. And these studies cover 110 countries from all regions of the world. These studies of the International Association of Universities tackle 4 main questions: governance of universities, institutional and academic drivers and tools, teaching and research benefit and challenge, benefit and cooperation, of course, and emerging issues and the future on internationalization. It should be noted that this is the self-reported studies which with institutions study to sometimes overestimate their results. However, what is important to in the report is not only the answer of a university, but it also the questions. Then I suggest to all of you to read this very nice full report, which we cannot present here in detail. It provides a clear understanding of all of the dimensions of comprehensive internationalization. Just few results. The first finding is that internationalization is increasing worldwide for the majority of institutions. 77% of institutions feel that internationalization increased. And there is no significant differences between different regions of the world. It is worth noting here that America has the highest concentration of institutions experiencing the decline in internationalization. 14% feel that internationalization decreased in America. We will skip this slide and first come back later on these results. Another point in these two bits is the new tools, and particularly digital tools. Internationalization has increased thanks to the whole series of tools and institutional instruments. Here, the non-exhaustive list which main means to develop internationalization. Some of them are particularly important with a growing interest. For example, digital tools, and if you have questions about that, we have specialist Hada will answer you. But also other tools like branch campus. Branch campus are a major important means since they allow to develop comprehensive collaborations between countries. Perhaps you can detail just this point, but or this point, because branch campus is not only a satellite of a university, it's a real full collaborations between institutions. A fully integrated global university borders, degrees are awarded by university, same academic standards as the campus. You have also strong global positioning, combine excellence and international diversities. Research and innovation is included in the collaborations with teaching. And we have a strategic state partnership as an example of science diplomacy. When if the agreement is balanced, it is a very good tool to fight against foreign trade and to have global collaborations with it. Digital transformations has become one of the main drivers of internationalization, as I said before. For example, do digital technology offer global access to expand international enrollment through online learning and digital services? They allow virtual mobility and collaborative online international learning. They allow also informal collaboration in research by sharing data. It's a challenge also, corporate or scientific data. Who owns sensitive data? Digital transitions strengthen in university internationalizations by increasing global access and inclusions, enabling virtual collaborations and virtual mobility, supporting intercultural learning and expanding international academic partnerships. However, the digital transformations of the university has yet to be fully generalized across higher education systems. In the UNESCO reports in 2026, digital technologies and artificial intelligence are reshaping teaching and learning, but yet only one institution every 5 universities had a full artificial intelligence policy in 2025. It's very few, but it's a challenge for all institutions to build strategy in this field. Now, let us turn to the point of benefit and challenge of university internationalization. In the international university associations, in the report, enhanced international cooperation and capacity building remain the most important benefits of internationalizations at global level and in all regions of the world, except in North America. Increased global, international, and intercultural knowledge, skills, and competencies for all students and staff is the second most important benefit at global level, and the first in North America. About the obstacle and challenge. Not enough financial resources and increased workload of staff, of academic staff and administrative staff are clearly the major internal limits for internationalizations in higher education institutions. But this is not a deal breaker. We can use one. You can face to. Another major concerns identified in many countries in both global north and global south is brain drain, as I mentioned before. In some cases, the retention rate of international graduates is particularly high, with outgoing students choosing to remain in the host country for their professional career. While virtual forms of internationalizations may help to mitigate this phenomenon, we are unlikely to eliminate it entirely. But you have, in this slide, the balance that we have to find between the benefit and the challenge. The benefit and the risk of internationalization then must be carefully balanced to support its sustainable development. Achieving this balance is often challenging, as it depends on a wide range of institutional, academic, societal, geopolitical, and technological factors. Moreover, this balance differs significantly across regions. For example, in Africa, brain drain is identified as a main societal risk for the 1% of institutions and is considered as a major challenge in 75% of higher education institutions in sub-Saharan. But it's all my concept. To conclude, the road ahead and perspectives. Even though internationalization has progressed significantly in all regions of the world, particularly due to the growing autonomy of higher education institutions, significant challenges remain to reach a truly comprehensive model of internationalization as the WIT definition. Thus, digital technologies and virtual internationalization tools need to be more widely deployed and integrated across many areas of education. Developing a clear and coherent international strategy supported by effective governance and able to mobilize all full range of university strength, all actors continue to represent a major challenge for many institutions. Aligning the interests and priorities of stakeholders in order to establish effective, balanced, and sustainable partnerships also remain difficult, both at the institutional and national level. National strategy do not always sufficiently take into account institutional priorities, while institutional strategy may not fully align with national objectives, making overall strategic areas difficult to achieve. Looking ahead, we must also continue to make progress in such areas, such as the expansion of transnational education. More universities can establish branch campus, dual degree, and international partnership abroad. The intercultural competency development. More universities will focus more on preparing students for multicultural and global work on development. Strengthening regional and global academic partnerships. It is essential to address societal issues through transdisciplinary collaborations from university and international networks. And finally, escape question and challenge will drive our discussion and over the course of this meeting. Thank you for your attention.
Even academic stakeholders at the university level. What are the actions and how to skip that? What can be put in place towards this internationalization process? And this is the first question I will address you. Here, start, Sunil.
Good morning to all of you. I'm quite delighted to be here with you this morning and all 3 days long, of course. Fatou, it's very relevant question. Thank you for it. And I think it's a real challenge for all our universities in Africa, of course, but in Europe or all around the world. Actually, the question is how do we coordinate all actors and all actions too, so internationalization becomes institution-wide rather than isolated in the international office. In order to succeed, I think it's necessary at least first like internationalization with the university core and the university missions to create shared ownership across academic and administrative staff units, and third, produce visible outputs, the most difficult one. This one, but produce visible outputs that stakeholders can see, can use, and can measure. How can we do that? That's the question. I have identified a few tips to follow. I think first we have to clarify what internationalization means for the university all dimensions: recruitment, mobility, research partnerships, translational education, employability, international rankings, reputation, etc., etc. Two, I think we have to identify all stakeholders, 3 levels of stakeholders in our universities. First of all, academic stakeholders, the presidents, of course, but my presidents for international affairs, he exists. The department heads, the faculty representatives, the researcher and laboratory directors, etc. The administrative stakeholders, which is the second level, the international office, of course, but admissions, student affairs, finance, human resources, legal affairs, communication, marketing, housing and campus life, alumni are also interested in the case. No? The external stakeholders, the ministry and the public authorities, of course, but partners universities as well, employers, investors and cultural institutes, alumni growth, etc. And finally, the student stakeholders, student unions and student associations, exchange and domestic students. First, clarify what internationalization means. 2, identify the stakeholders. 3, build, as we said before this morning, build a multi-level governance structure. The current folder has 3 interconnected levels: the strategic level, the operational one, and the community one. The strategic level with a steering committee which approved the intellectual strategy is prioritize regions and partnerships, which allocates resources, which produces a strategy document and a multi-year roadmap, which an annual action plan to help a budget framework. The operational coordination level with a council, at least, this is really the engine of implementation, of coordination, of harmonization of processes and protocols. And the community of participatory level with thematic working groups, faculty workshops, student consultation. We don't have to forget the student, never, never, never. And the feedback is very important to collect, in order to generate ideas, to identify barriers, and to encourage collaborations. 4, it's crucial to organize stakeholder commitments through concrete actions, such as sharing with us, is all of us making exercises, university-wide consultation, for example, what works today, what are the obstacles, what should be prioritized, what support is missing, etc. Shared governance charters too, establishing too as well faculty internationalization, it's building data governance, because internationalization often suffers from fragmented information and equivalent to communication. 5, I have suggested it before, we have to create thematic working groups in order to make collaborations concrete. It can be about mobility, about curriculum, about research, about student experience, partnerships, staff development, whatever topic, And 6, ensure decision-making transparency. I do insist really in this point. We have to publish, we have to communicate about all decisions, about all reports, action plans, updated priorities, and encourage horizontal collaboration when it's possible. And at last, we have to produce deliverable and consolidated outputs, such as roadmaps, partnerships policy, mobility procedure, shared databases, dashboards, annual reports, etc. There are examples, only examples. In conclusion, 2 words: sharing and transparency are the keywords if we want to gather all the administrative and academic stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you think? Do you have any questions? What do you think of these key indicators? What do you think of this, of the way internationalization should be implemented in your universities? We're ready to take questions from the floor, if you have some. No, sure. I need to continue with another question. So, to one of our still in the process of this internationalization, just get on your base. What innovative models of internationality can help balance global engagement with local identity, at least trace that international vision must be invaded into the cultural and global identity of each country. And welcome me, I would say, therefore, the real nation of internationalization.
Hi, I'm John and very pleased to be here today, responding to Joe me. Well, we have, both societies have oriented a lot education and more higher education through competition. And sometimes we just feel like as if internationalization has been understood as competition. And that is something like the responsibility of the Reikis. Hadaspe has said a lot about that. And we share the same vision. We share people. During the meeting, and we see that we share the same vision. And internationalization is widely understood today as both cause and consequence of pluralization. And local robust suffers somewhat a result even at when identities are being reified. We are in a new time. There was this time where the focus was on internationalization, but now we have also the return of strong identities. So we have to watch out and to make a combination of global and local, this global feature. And it's very difficult because of the rankings. Because the rankings don't care about the local issues. And that's a real problem. Because it's there is something like an equality between this aims, the internationalization, and the local priorities. Ada has said a lot also on that point. So, for concrete solution to fight against that, first of all, we can devote curricula rooted in local context, case studies, examples, and projects that reflect local cultures, histories, and social issues. Federica's said a lot also on that. Then, of course, we could establish partnerships with local and international, but with local also institutions to create joint programs. Well, one could be dual degrees programs, for example. Then we can implement transnational education initiatives where students can engage themselves in learning experience that span multiple countries. We could also encourage students to participate in service learning projects that address local community needs while connecting global issues. It's not something on contrary. We can make the link between global issue and local issue. It's not stranger matches. Most of the time, it's the same with another scale. So we have to respect the local issue and the local community needs, and this could be a way of dealing with that. Also, we can create some problem, for example, that facilitates cultural exchange between students from different backgrounds, not only but different university, like it means internationalization, but from different backgrounds, allowing them to share their local identities. Leverage alumni network to connect current students with graduates who have successfully navigated internationalization with maintaining a strong local identity with others who had not the change to travel. And then we can encourage interdisciplinarity programs that combine close studies with local subjects, allowing students to explore how global issues impact their communities and vice versa.
Thank you, Alexei. If there is a comments or question from the audience, the stage, yes, please, either one. The rest of the speakers. We need to argue ourselves about that. Casualization and
I start.
sorry. You say no matter at you,
Okay, my name is Mady Esteoule on the new generation because to collect the pilot you perceive in Ethiopia with a hot subscriber. When countries call it international, that's what I'm here. So thank you for inviting us to this very insightful program. I'm very excited about the internationalization because we are doing it now. But my question is, we are talking about digital transformation, academic transformation, reasonable to what have you, but without something we should touch. That is for special for African trip, as African spent over around the different countries, Europe and America. When that academic integration and amalgamate with business in the Kurdish innovation action. Most of the African university, as one who studied the last conference in Atlanta, he said to the politicians, academicians hinder Africa from developing. The academicians cannot help university students to bring the change, to be entrepreneurs, to be innovators, to create something. So, academic institutions not contribute to academic or Africa economic development. We are all guilty here. Our students finish universities with a degree, master's, PhD, they are beginning to cross to Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, to look for opportunity for job. Some are in the Mediterranean Sea. Those who cross, they are probably to France, Italian and British basic countries because they are looking for opportunity. Any degree in their hand, master's in the UKD or BA degrees. Why? We teach them, we set their mind to create a business, to be entrepreneur, like Americans and Africans. So we say, professors, African professors, they cannot change the theory abstraction to action. We are full of strength. Our research from Fatou international is on the shelf everywhere. It's on the shelf in Africa, but you look, we don't even use it for science. So our research has to be commercialized. Our research has to create something. Our research has to create a business. Our research has to help the student to be innovators, to be entrepreneurs, especially Europeans. So we are country, European, American theories, and our students are more educated, they are not fed, they are not skipped. So we are progressing functionally in the faith. So how do you help our students to be more practical, to be more entrepreneurs, innovators, also the businesses in America. Created the university booklets and scientific research and it translated to practical. So what is wrong with a crypto institution? I teach for more than 25 years. I'm guilty myself. So this internationalization should help us. Where is great? What has? What is this?
Particularly, this is here. You get to the way to make issues. So here's this small how experts to answer. Let me just advertise for the next 2 days of the conference. These issues on durable design, student sociability will be addressed tomorrow, and you will have a number of sessions. I will talk about that when introducing the breakout sessions after lunch. And then on the first day, third day, we'll speak of partnership and networks. But going up to your question, sir, definitely you tackle the issues of academic curriculum, entrepreneurship, employability. I think we have good experience to answer this question here.
It's not only an African issue, it's an issue for every student at every university. We still ask some courses, they go nowhere. When they left, they can't find any other. This is a problem for everyone. It's not only for Africans to do.
Maybe Professor Adepitari, you can give a first answer or start giving a first answer to this question.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that question. And like Stephen just mentioned, the problem you highlighted is not an African problem. And I say that with confidence because I have developed a tool that actually helps universities metamorphose as the industry moves. And the times I've interacted with embassies of different countries in Nigeria, whether the French embassy or the American embassy, the question is, you think you developed this for Africa. We also need it in our own country just to establish what you said, that the problem is not African in nature. However, on the issue of employability, I think the way to start reframing will be to focus on problem-based learning. Because what you call businesses, what you call entrepreneurship, is really someone who identified a problem and curated a solution around it and is offering it to you for value. And so our curriculum needs to come to context with African problems that also have global colorations. Because if you're solving a local water problem, you might actually invariably have been solving a global water problem. But we also need to come to terms with our problems within our curriculum, and then problem-based learning where it's not just theories, but simply going from this classwork to what exactly it translates to in the industry. I think like Fatou just mentioned, tomorrow is an explicit session on this. And so if it's something you want to learn more about, sir, I would invite you to join that session.
Thank you. So we'll take another question from Jits, please.
Thank you so very much. Yes, thank you so very much. This is out from Rero University. I'd like to start by taking the presidency of organizing PCHip. But usually we work is university also. I would like also about knowledge and thank you two speakers. But rather, I'm officer at Fabrica. I have employed direct works Professor Arda, which we are not really about of that symmetry of the partnership between over subject waters, which we all kind of understand. But the issue is the issue on Africa side that if you take other needs maybe of African countries, of course in Ethiopia, BDE, in Abdoni, Israelis, of Korea, all those list at percentage in order to the US still lives. But when come to Africa, we have KS a lot without say like 0.8, 0.6, you pay somewhere around 0.3. So isn't that a way we doing actual kind of dialogue with we should actually reflect internally on why we allocate more resources to pursue both research or academic and therefore internationalization. Because every partner we are working with, be Europe or US, no university came with the MOU, let's say, it's where kind of top of this as you expect. Always it's joint engagement, joint cooperation. So if we want to kind of teach a symmetric argument to a little bit of symmetry, we need to approach with the source of our that is only way forward. What's your reflection that big sorry.
Thank you for your question.
Right, thank you. I appreciate that question. So if I heard it correctly, you're talking about depending on our own resources, not waiting for external resources, is it?
Yeah. These are kind of fully resource. We need to approach partners without.
With our own, of course. I mean, when you come to the table, enabled, in Nigeria, they say okay, then we don't give you a Nigerian cover. But the point is, when you have the yam and the cobblers, you have more power, right, to negotiate. So you decide how you want to slice it, because you have the yam and you have the cobblers. So when you're coming only with the yam, you're begging someone else to help you cut it. He's up tell you, well, I just want to cut the head, not the middle. No, I don't want to cut the middle. I want to go to the tail. But if you have both the yam and the cutlass, you say, well, I want 10 pieces from this yam. Your point is valid. We need to pull resources together. The common word we offered here is, I think Africa is of age, to stop going cap in hand, looking for resources, but utilizing what it has to get what it wants. And to your point again, when we get to the table with these international organizations, and we are international as well, I would say, what you don't put forward, they're not going to ask you. Like I said, every partnership I have negotiated, I have often put forward a reciprocity. And until I put it forward, it was never on the table. So it's for us to put what we want on the table, and then negotiation. Of course, it doesn't have to always go our way, but again, negotiation requires that there's a balance. However, we need to be conscious of the fact that coming with our own resources gives us an edge, to your point. So you're right. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have a last question to one of our experts. This is Françoise Profi. And then, okay, so let's go to Charitabou. Yeah.
Thanks to Maria with any kids. It took me years of the banners. My question is a little bit focused on what Flay was saying about the definition by David on the intentionality of commercialization of higher education. Some of us have a program on that definition, because sometimes the parties have to decide what the definition should look like. Yes, in principle, internationalization should be intentional. But if we look at from the global south point of view, particularly countries like Ethiopia or Ethiopian higher education institutions, or many other African higher education institutions, the way we do internationalization is not intentional. It's somehow present or true, but global knows point of view, internationalization is intentional, deliberate, in the way that they want to steer their higher education institution. But if you had those African public universities or any other, many other sub-Saharan African universities, the internationalization is not intention, not in principle, in practice. So that's why we have a problem. Even when you question that kind of definition, which does not actually suit the global south in terms of practice. So my suggestion is you not only in terms of definition, but in many other like strategies, policies, directives, rules, regulations, whatever comes from the global north, we have to need to colonize it. It's not colonizing, colonizing. Colonization is it. And you terminology that I would like to introduce, I have introduced like 6 years ago. Colonization is continentalization, nationalization, and industrialization of concepts, ideas, theories, so that it fits to the context So everything that happens to Europe may not be good enough for Africa. So we need to continentalize it. Everything that works for Africa may not work for Ethiopia. So we need to nationalize it. Everything that works for Ethiopia may not work for my university, our university. So I think it is nationalizing. So that kind of definition are still under question for me and for many other African higher education students. And
Thank you. So, if I may not start a discussion, but if I may say so, you're seeing the fact of the Africanization of internationalization. Am I right? Okay. But this Africanization of internationalization, what do you think of this for me? Okay. There you go.
The early definition deep only the frameworks of internationalizations, and after each country and each institutions must apply with its own rule, their own priorities. And the most important thing is to say internationalization concerns all things, all mission of a university. But either have to think separately, teaching from one side, research or another side, or to internationalize administrations in the university. You have a global dimensions with all purpose, and to define a clear strategy with your own interests. And you have a balance between foreign partners and your own priorities. Internationalizations must set us, your institutions. That's first. And if you have not interest for one partnership, for example, you have to find another. It's but fundamentally, our missions teaching, such as in challenge climate change, digital transformations, health, they are worldwide dimensions. It is internationalizations. This is we have to think the problems of health in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in America. And we see that when you have pandemic, biologists, security worldwide, and it's a kind of internationalization of a dimension of skills for students, but it's only one example. And like to think how materialize worldwide powers in our teachings and in research programs.
Then we may take an answer from Ciso Kofi or not now? No?
Just I want to add that, of course, some of us were speaking from the north, from the global north, and we are aware of it. But even in the global north, we have problems of asymmetry. And we have to struggle for our own local needs. It's not just an African problem. I just want to share this. And the decolonial perspective, that's either the perspective of Ada this morning. I work, and I am a researcher, I work on America, on Latin America. And of course, working about Latin America, I share completely the decolonial perspective. And just what I wanted to share, just this reflection. Ada, could you ask something as well, or we all?
Well, I mean, maybe what I would add, just something for us to take away as we go for full break, is the fact it's on data and digital sovereignty. Since we're dealing with sovereignty here and owning what we own, the numbers are quite impressive when you think about it. Today we have about 570 million internet users in Africa. That's very good. Last year alone, the data center growth was about 17.5%. But here's the thing, that number can be very deceptive. You know why? Because 80 to 95% of the data generated by these internet users are processed outside of the continent. I want you to think about that. I'll stop it.
Thank you. Collaboration and partnerships, and she's an associate professor of food science and technology. She is also the coordinator of food security of the Sea Security Center of Excellence in Agriculture and Food Security to Kenya. And she has a link with the Fresh France as well. She's the principal coordinator of the SHIT Key Air project on strengthening higher institutional agriculture and food training, Kenya, France, under the partnership of Africa and France, and once again of the French Agency for Development. And I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Mady Bathily, which is the Secretary General of the Senegalese Agency for Reforestation of the Great Green Wall in Dakar. Mr. Bathily, the former Secretary General of the Gaston Berger University in St. Louis. He is the former Secretary General of Hassan Seki University in Esteoule, and is an expert for the for university governance for the University Association of the Francophone universities. So we're very happy to welcome Professor Kupiningaya Sir Bathily. And I will start with my first round of questions to our experts. I will go back to a question for Mrs. Profi from the Ministry of Higher Education and Research in France, just to make the link to what we have discussed earlier in the last roundtable. Is internationalization intentional or not? And we tackle the issues of, finally, pressures, external pressures of all internationalization framework, whatever in terms of definition, in terms of concept. And my question to you, Françoise Profi, what role does governance, in fact, play in maintaining autonomy amidst increasing global pressures? The mics want to care.
Thank you for your question, Fatou. I move on first quickly on this question and offer, I think, a few points of consideration. In my opinion, and for university governance, meaning its internal rules, decision-making bodies, its relationship with the state and the various quality evaluations of controls. So for university governance, it can help preserve its freedom to design its own program, its own research agenda, and its own values without being forced to align everything with external objectives such as profit, ideology, or geopolitical issues. In this sense, governance protects autonomy by ensuring that the way decisions and powers are organized preserves a real margin of freedom even in the face of outside pressures. First, clear, transparent governance frameworks at national and institutional levels allow universities and systems to navigate external expectations without surrounding their core missions. Rather than reacting passively to markets, rankings, or geopolitical competition, strong governance enables institutions to set strategic priorities, protect academic freedom, and manage resources in line with their own values. Second, governance is where the balance between accountability and autonomy is negotiated. We see more and more external demands, funding conditionally, international cooperation agreements, quality assurance expectations, or geopolitical alignments. Strong governance structures allow us to respond to these demands while remaining accountable to many different stakeholders and still leaving space for local and institutional decisions. So, in multi-level governance involving ministries, universities, accreditation bodies, international networks, and so on, capture pressures into partnerships. For example, within the Bologna process we have in Europe, we have observed how shared governance tools such as European standards and guidelines, for example, promote convergence without imposing standardization. They help the systems adapt to global trends without losing their national and institutional specificities. So governance, in my experience, is not the opposite of autonomy. It is a safeguard. By designing governance that is participatory, transparent, and forward-looking, we can turn autonomy into a real strength for institutions and societies, enabling them to respond to global challenges while remaining true to their missions and values.
Thank you, Mrs. Lakofi. And to make the link with the governance and normal issue at the same time, we'll be speaking of the international partnership this morning. And I want to ask this question to Professor Hercule. How can higher education institutions ensure that international partnerships do not compromise their autonomy? Okay, thank you, Fatou. First of all, I want to beat the reality of the ground. For Kenya, Ethiopia, I think most of the African public universities are the same. I was just talking to some professors from Addis Ababa University. And one thing I want to even mention is that already internationalization is taking place. Already south to south cooperation is taking place. I was talking to them, we already, University of Nairobi, for example, we've been historically collaborating with Addis Ababa University, among other universities in the region. So this already is happening, so we can't run away from it. And we call ourselves what we call SAGAs. SAGAs means semi-autonomous government authorities. Yeah, we are public universities per se, but you know that we get a lot of funding from the government. And so without that funding, most of these public institutions literally cannot run their courses or their programs. And this has been an issue with governance against structures. We did public universities. And if you look at some of the African universities, they're actually in debt. And the tuition fee also for the students have gone up because they have to pay very high for the universities to generate resources to maintain the programs. So what is the balance? Here comes partnership. So when you partner with other universities, for example, from the north, you bring capacity building, training, new things, new ways of doing things. And also you bring in resources that can help. But also this comes with challenges. I just want to give one example quickly because later I'll be speaking to this tomorrow. No, the day after tomorrow. The other day we were signing a partnership with the PSL in France, a number of universities in France who are collaborating with our engineering faculties in the University of Nairobi. Now our tuition fee is up there
In France, it's almost free. I think it's 2,000 euros, right? 2,000, 3,000 euros, right? Now, if you have your degree, what happens then? Will the French students, when they come to Kenya, for example, will they be paying that high price or this low price? So that is a compromise. So what happened is that our university management had to sit down and say, now we have to harmonize our fee structure and to fit with France. But that means that you have to compromise with the resources. But because it's a program, of course, we're able to pay for the running of the program. So what do I need to say? As much as we are collaborating, as much as we have partnerships, sometimes you have to compromise. You are learning from the best, yeah? But also you have to compromise something. Maybe the government has to fund more. In Kenya, we have a new student financing model that is not working, for example. Most people say it's not working. Why? Because students have to pay a lot of money, and so it cuts off some of the students who cannot afford university education. So they are forced to miss out university education. So this means then, for us to make autonomy work, we need to bring in governance issues. We need to discuss more, and I'm happy that you've already brought this. This has to happen for good partnerships to work and the internationalization to work. The other issue is curriculum. For us to really be autonomous, then we have to also make our curriculum international. Most of our curriculum, and I heard someone say again in this room, we are producing graduates who are not employable. They do not meet the industry demand. And why? Because most of our universities do not have very strong links with the industry sector. So we also have to remember part of the partnership is with the industry sector. As you train as a university professor, you are training for a global talent. You're training for a student who can match needs in France, for example, in Kenya. And to be globally competitive, they'll need to align your curriculum to global needs. And remember, we are also research. We are solving global challenges. When you say climate change, it's not only in Africa. Climate change is also in Europe. So either way, you have to bring that to your teaching. You have to bring that to your curriculum so that they are competency-based and the credits that you produce can actually work anywhere in the world. And that's what we mean by being international. And I see a lot of curriculum revisions around most of the major universities in Africa. I know if I ask someone here from Addis Ababa University, you'll definitely say that every 5 years you review your curriculum, or there's something that always triggers a curriculum change. And that is what really brings most of these issues, is part of it, that we want our curriculums to remain globally relevant. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You okay? Oh. Already stage.
Are there any questions from the audience so far? What would be discussed? Yes, please, sir. Niche. Great. Do the try. Your candidates. Could you please stand up? Say your name and institution. Just have to press the liberty. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Gakio from Roma University. Presentations and the keynote speech made by speaker very interesting. Thank you for that. With a couple of questions, of course, they are lead path for the sake of clarity. I tried within the separation. My first question is that how can higher learning institutions embrace internationalization and globalization, while still preserving their institutional autonomy, local and cultural, including national priorities? Of how can we maintain our local, our culture, and our identities without compromising our identities? The other is that, you know that curriculum is a major instrument or the tool that we consider during the internationalization of higher institutions. So with this regard, how can curriculum internationalization be achieved without losing local identity and the cultural relevance? As before, there is a tension between the Western science and the indigenous knowledge. Tension is there. So how do we include our indigenous knowledge where internationalization requires normalities.
Sorry, sir. This is your first question? Let's keep question. Okay, so maybe Professor Kaniga, yeah, in answer to this, Savage. Yes.
For Canadian, some species are made.
He has
Speak up. Yes.
we'll take this one and answer in a little bit.
Or yeah. What's it?
Yeah, again, I'll be really practical here. I know there is a theory, references, and everything, but I'll borrow from our experience at the University of Nairobi, how you can make sure as you do, you make your institution international, but you still remaining relevant to your local context. I'm engaged in partnerships, and I think the thinking before has been we need to do what the North is doing and neglect what we should be doing in the South. So for me, every time a partner comes, and I would say like last week we had this African Forward Summit, we had a lot of partner universities wanting to partner with the University of Nairobi. The first thing they said is that I want to meet you and discuss about how we can partner, how can we do the ABCD, this activity and this. One thing I always keeping at the back of my mind is, do we have clear objectives while we are doing this partnership? Remember, and I tell people I did that perfect example of a partnership when you're doing internationalization, is that it's like a marriage. First, to see a nice girl, you don't just go for her, you have to look at her character, right? So when you're wanting to collaborate, let's say between, because France is here, let me use that example, France and Kenya or France and Ethiopia, you need to ask, what do they bring to the table? What are you bringing to the table? And what are innovations and visions as a university? What are the objectives towards this partnership? Define activities clearly. What will University of Nairobi do? What will University of Addis Ababa do? And mutually, how can we then implement these activities while maintaining our local context and them maintaining their own, but I would say core developing or core producing knowledge. Because for a long time, we had more of the knowledge coming from the North and none coming from the South. But now it's changing. We are having now also the North interested in our own local knowledge. And that's how it should be. For example, if you have some visitors, take them around, let them see farmers. And that's what I do actually. I just take a surgery because I tend to walk a lot. When they come, I make sure, can we go do a campus tour? Can you see what facilities we have, what programs we have, what challenges we face before you enter this partnership? Because also in a marriage, you might end and later it ends in a divorce, right? So I always insist, can you come and see our local context and also all see their own context? And this means also the university has to invest. Sometimes, of course, because of programs, you can go to France, see what they do. And I can tell you, I've spent a number of times in a France institution like Civade, really liking how do they do things. And they also come to our university and see, yeah, these are the normal challenges, this is how we are structured. And I even do videos, documentaries. I want a partner to see what we go through. This is how our programs are structured. This is our curriculum. So if we are designing our curriculum together, it should be done by both partners. They should know the level of knowledge. They should see how we view certain things like water issues, food issues. This is how we do our agriculture. This is how we do your agriculture. Then together, mutually or jointly, how then do we move forward? Even research, that's how it's supposed to be. Before you sign that contract for a joint research project, define your roles as a local partner and identifying my own role. And this brings me then to your second question on curricula. Also, I know a lot of the program that has just been mentioned. One of the things we are going to be doing is designing new curricula that are more globally competitive, bring new ways of teaching, pedagogical skills, the problem-based learning. And these are aspects that most of the information in the curriculum will not be coming only from the North, but should actually mainly be driven also by the South partners. So this means then you have to be very active as a Southern partner when doing curriculum reviews. Give it a local context, but also build towards addressing a global challenge. As I said, the world now is a global village. You cannot afford to really have solution that only fits Kenya or fits only Ethiopia. No, you should be designing or training your students to generate solutions that, first of all, feed into the global problem, but maybe using a local context. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. That pretty much add. For creating of the curriculum is creating another problem. That is, in your acted to apply or try to balance the Western science and the indigenous knowledge, our curricula is becoming a reproach. That is a serious problem because you was compromising participant we try to entertain the two. So our curricula became very bulky and relatively vertical to cover in the academic. This is what the serious problem that we are facing. May I ask a question? Thank you. One good point that is low inserted is that internationalization at all. I'm very explicit and I like it. So my question is that is it feasible achieving the easier any practical result from globe? That is very first. My final question is that how can institutions ally the vision of becoming autonomous and internationalized without any fat in the technical difficulties in foreign donors? So if land advisor, if you are assigned to certain autonomy and international, I'd say, then why do you advise? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Professor Purvey, is there any answer? Well,
Practical
well,
answer.
yeah, practical answer to have to be not on dependency in regarding internationalization process, but more having its own, I will say, maybe self-funded, self-designed curriculum or framework. What will be one of your advice?
About internationalization at home
Yes.
without mobility.
Without mobility.
Yes. Fit.
Ce que vous as present Djibouti.
Yes, it's not so easy questions. Perhaps Hannah with digital tools, you can complete my answer. I show you in my talk the different solutions to develop internationalization as home. First of all, you need partnership, and you have to choose partnerships which can balance the interest of both, and use Bluetooth digital tools to create links at distance between students. It's for example colleagues, and also between teachers, and teachers must correct at distance for context of curriculum, what kind of knowledge, what skills, and after the students can be contacted by digital tools, be interference of defining by the teachers, supervised by the teachers, and working together. And it's a one solutions to develop internationalization at home. Yeah, of course, different platforms with teaching contents that you can use at distance. You can also add the virtual classrooms, but really in the internationalization has a sense. But for example, in my university, we develop a campus antenna. We teach only students far from big towns to teach health sciences, for example. And we organize students in classrooms with teachers, but only with meetings and escalations. Et en Deutsch, it can give you practical experiences and the kind of tools to develop the transformations, but with a local priorities and the interests of the institutions.
Right, thank you. Still to respond to one of your questions, how do you can attain sovereignty autonomy whilst still having technical and financial dependency, isn't it? Okay, so let's think about it this way. Generally, I think where we talk about dependency within African institutions, we deal with financial dependency, we deal with technical dependency, we also deal with knowledge dependency, and sometimes with talent dependency. But here's the thing, the goal is not to refuse external aid, right? Now we're looking for financial independency or financial autonomy. However, what I would counsel is to ensure that no single source of funding controls more threshold within what you have. For example, everything about your funding is for, I don't want to mention this, but we know the funder too, right? It's coming from one particular source. And so the day the funder says, I'm no longer addressing, then your entire program squeezes. No, it shouldn't come from a single source, okay? That's just more, you should have an operating budget that's a peak on. Then, the other thing, it also means negotiating grants, okay? When these grants come, you want to negotiate and ensure that it's a bilateral agreement, that the other party also has something to lose the day they decide to stop. So it makes it interdependent. They're dependent on you, and you're also dependent on them. Not that you're fully relied on them and they have nothing to do with the day they decide to pull out. You see that? And then finally, I think we also need to begin to look within, though structurally, the African Development Bank is also somewhat dependent of the big, the larger, but the earlier the African banks, also starts, investing into the continent, I think it will give researchers a measure of independence. But take this whole, ensure your funding is not coming from just one source. You have, multiplicity exactly of funders.
Okay, thank you. We have a question in here. You know,
Thanks so much for the chance. I'm Abdullah Kamal. He came from Abaniji Press. When I see autonomy versus internationalization, they are very important terms. Without internationalization, autonomy is not really good. Maybe I would have not a question for Professor Country, not a question, but I would be very happy if you tell the experience you have back up at your institution. For autonomy, one most important thing is curriculum audits and maintains quality of the programs very, very good. In line with this one also, curriculum accreditation. A curriculum of the program is accredited at the national level or international level will be very important. So this is also very important in terms of autonomy and wait for internationalization. So are there such type of practice at your institution? Is it just to know if there's such type of practices, does it bring any change for internationalization? Just, I would be very happy if you tell me some mistakes, please. And the second one, I would talk from our country perspective. For example, we have 50 plus other education institutions. Previously, the government of Ethiopia intensively were working to expand towards higher education institutions. So within this, all institutions, they were providing the same type of product. For example, it is two factors. You currently see it in most of the higher education institutions. And we carry it also health and so on. So certainly the government of Ethiopia trying to understand the problem is duplication, and the government is already differentiating university, basically his cadavers. Receptive university, applied university, and concrete university. Then within this differentiation also, each university has its own focus there. For example, I came from Bathily. Bathily is very well known
especially in teaching engineering in water technology fields. So the government of Ethiopia already gave us a focus area, and public university should work, number one, with this, number two, with this, and so forth. So I believe that this would give a very good opportunity for autonomy as well as for internationalization. So, what do you think? What is the perspective? Any one of you can give some insight with this. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to make sure I December, okay, your question, and sorry, about your first question, you were referring to the Professor Kenya, but on the curriculum. Right, okay. So, and how to embedded the curriculum, once again, in the local context of the Ethiopian, I will say, internationalization process, and how can autonomy driven and not autonomy versus internationalization can help this process of internationalization.
Can we have your still second in on that? Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Allow me to just, I know we said we are moving from rankings, but allow me to mention the ranking of University of Nairobi first, and to tell you why I'm mentioning it. As much as you are doing happy from that, we are ranked 5th or 6th in Africa, usually after South African universities, and they just give you a secret to this. It's not really that we are that big. I know we are the oldest in Kenya and East Africa, but it's because of research and innovation in our curriculum. These are secret. And why? Because we have many partners who support our research. So we do a lot of joint research with many countries, many institutions, and even locally within the country. So when you go to Kenya, you hear from the president downwards, someone was paying at the University of Nairobi, because we pertain that our curriculum is very relevant. It's accredited by the Commission of University Education. We don't do, and this I want to say to my Ethiopian friends and partners, that never copy and paste. I know Africans, we have that habit of, I go to France or I go to Germany. I know most of you who are trained maybe somewhere in Europe or in the US, so you just go copy and paste what you see and bring it to your university. No, it shouldn't be that way. It should be that you learn and then come and customize it to the local context. It works. How does it fit within your university? How can you build on that? And one secret the University of Nairobi has maintained is to have many partners. I think Professor Ada has mentioned this. So apart from, I'll give you one example. Last year, when President Trump came in power, for a long time, the University of Nairobi had the major, some of, I would say, highest amount in terms of dollars was coming from USA, in the US. And so what happens? He comes and cancels everything. Why? A number of universities suffered. Why did the University of Nairobi suffer? Because we had other alternatives. We had other collaborations. We had other partners. We barely felt it. Actually, if you mention every researcher at the university had a USAID project, but also they are partnering with other partners. So I want to emphasize that, yeah, as much as we want to make our institution grow in terms of being international, we should not lose our own control, but we invite as many partners as possible because everyone is bringing some value. There's some value addition coming from each partner. And this strengthens not only your staff, but also your students, your institutional structures and governance. Because I can tell you, if you look at profile for most of the staff members, they have been trained from outside, they are collaborating. So when you go teaching in your class, and this I tell many professors, when you've had that global view and you go to a classroom, you teach better than someone with no, let's say, a joint research. They have not traveled. They are just within Addis Ababa. They don't want to know what's happening out there. So how are you expected to train using that curriculum that is outdated a student that we are calling globally competitive, a student who can go anywhere in France and perform? So when I'm asked for students to go for mobility, I always give assurance to my partners. I tell them, this student, you will see, he'll outdo even people in France. They'll do well. And the other day, we were hosting the African Forward Summit. And there were PSL and other universities. We are collaborating with over 21 universities in France. And they were saying, your students are very good. They came, they emerged at the top. We were worried. They don't know the French language. You are English-speaking country. But they performed well. Why?
because whatever they learned before they even went there was through a curriculum that is accredited, that is international, that is built in towards problem-based learning. So we are producing globally competitive students. So my final parting shot is that let's not cut and paste as Africa, but let's customize what fits best for Africa. How do we learn from other partners? How can we integrate all this together to make our university grow, to make them better and move forward together? And this not only from north to south, but let's also emphasize on south to south. I can tell you I've supervised this from students from Ethiopia. At that time, we were going to grow as a country. We had joint projects with the other universities within the region. And so it's not only the north, but also within south to south cooperation. We can strengthen this and make our university better, make our curriculum more competitive. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Peak. Yeah, and I may jump on the question of accreditation, just to mention about journey on that. Won't give the answer, but just to this question of accreditation, curriculum development, and accreditation, this will be addressed tomorrow afternoon by Foucault Profi, which will give you the insight of what could be the role of the state in terms of facilitating what you mentioned, national and international recognition of diplomas. We have many questions, so. Please, sir, and then we'll move to the other side. Bye. We'll take first.
Thank you so much. And my question goes to Professor Kafi. During your insightful ideas, you mentioned about study autonomy. And the reason why you mentioned it was because of our universities are mainly funded by the government. So anybody can clarify, but is it possible to be dependent and autonomous? This is one question. Also, for autonomy, especially financial autonomy, means if you have freedom to manage your finance, regardless of wherever it comes, I think it's already financial autonomy. But still, you are dependent from your stakeholders or your students or your staff in the governors. So, do we need to be independent to be autonomous? So, a little explanation of this issue. Thank you.
Independence from your government.
He used to pick some.
Enfin,
Oh, okay, return site. Let's speak in French.
Merci beaucoup. Vous avez expliqué, je l'ai expliqué en français, en espérant que la prochaine fois, je ferai beaucoup d'efforts pour parler en anglais et je demanderai à Fatou de traduire tout ce que j'ai dit.
en fait, d'abord, c'est question sur l'autonomie et de l'épargne.
Je crois qu'en fait, l'autonomie a été bien développée par Félix ce matin, en parlant de l'IRH, pour de l'UCHRACR, pour de l'organisation, pour de l'Acadie. L'autonomie aussi, je parlais de parents. L'autonomie, c'est quoi? L'autonomie, c'est la possibilité à l'institution de pouvoir choisir son poste pour l'autonomie, clairement, de pouvoir dépenser, en fait, son objectif de l'institution A. Et puis, c'est là également, de bonnes coordination publique, entreprise, conflit, il y a tellement de contrôle que l'État va apporter. Notamment, il y a des audits, sur les comptes, les sources de finances, etc.
I was translate this best first. So as we have discussed over the last 2 years, by the way, during this project on autonomy, and the fact that you have those criteria, first the European criteria depend on autonomy, in the institutional, academic, organizational, you members, there is so fast and financial autonomy, and we have mentioned this in many workshops. Autonomy, it's not complete. You can be autonomous even though you are depending on public funding. You know, it's not controversial. I will even say to say I am an autonomous university, but I do have money from the state, from the government. Autonomy is finally how you can spend this money. As Professor Mr. Bathily just said, if you can decide on who's your recruitment, your academic recruitment, even your students recruitment, your administrative recruitment, even if it is the public funding, you have autonomous. If you can design on your curricula and their objectives and the content of your curricula, but you have money from the state, you are autonomous. It shouldn't be, as Professor Mady emphasized in French. It's not because you get public funding that you're not autonomous. Now, as you mentioned in the second part of this answer, the need for I would say, public supervision, governmental supervision, that would be highlighted by Françoise Profit in other sessions. This is the role of the state to give you guidance, not only fundings, but to give you guidance and actually to help the higher education institutions in defining their policy, their policy in whatever subject the universities are dealing with. And helping is not dependency. Helping is doing that through audit, as you mentioned, audit, a legal framework for universities to be able to do what they want to do, so policy in terms of strategy. Did I consult it correctly? Professor Couillonier, you would like to add something?
Yeah, I just want to explain a little bit about semi-autonomy. I know we can't run away that Addis Ababa University of Nairobi, and the rest of the public universities per se have to depend on the government. Why is this so? Remember, we are supporting what you call regular students. Regular students are students maybe from low resource backgrounds who have done very well because we rank. I know the two countries we rank, the students that are picked maybe for engineering, medicine in Addis Ababa, the University of Nairobi, by the fact that they receive money from the government to pay so that we receive that money as a university, financially we remain to be semi-autonomous. That doesn't mean we're not independent. You can also be independent, for example, as I mentioned, through partnerships, the little resources you get from your grant projects, among others, you can really be dependent. And I want to mention, like, for example, to give an example of the University of Nairobi, we've separated, for example, the docket for academic affairs, or I would say teaching and learning, from research. So, for example, if you look at our research arm, we have a whole deputy vice chancellor for research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Here, when we get donor-funded projects, we are actually independent, we are autonomous, because how we run the money, the government does not interfere. They know that we receive this funding, this number of millions, these grants, but how we spend it, the activities we do, are completely not controlled by the government. But there's that one part, again, for academics. So long as you're recruiting students from the public who should essentially not pay school fees or tuition fees, then you will remain semi-autonomous. And that's why the question for me and the challenge for the next session in the afternoon in my session, the question we need to brainstorm together as African countries is, can we really be fully autonomous without any government support and still remain to be public university? That will be the elephant in the room that we can discuss.
Thank you. I guess, Professor Suzy, you want to add something to this question? Autonomy debates.
You see, the fundamental questions and discussed only at Tudun about that, because François Profit said just before the balance between autonomy and accountability, but kind of semi-autonomy, and in France, for example, to give you a concrete example. And we can follow the criteria that I show about the 4 pillars of autonomy: organizational autonomy, HR autonomy, academic autonomy, and financial autonomy. For example, in France, before these steps of autonomy, with more autonomy, we had to discuss with the ministry if we want positions, if we were to recruit a professor. Now, 80% of the budget of a university is a public fund, is funded by the ministry, but with that, university do what they want. They share the budget between salaries, between research, between curricula, teaching. It's real. And after autonomy, university decide self if they want to recruit a professor or an administrative staff with a salary mass, PPO. And we manage the PO. And for example, at the end of the budget year, if it remains some money, we can keep it and use it the year after. That's a step with more autonomy and with responsibility, but also accountability. Then at the end, ministry said that if you fulfill your contract, if your goal is attained, if you have the reasons for facing to money that the government needs, and it is a feedback of a university to a government which flip the main money of a university.
Thank you. So we have two other questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I am program Sabaimbi, and we have been seeing this kind of organized closing remark of what kind of activities the last 2 years. And the combination I now looking is also well recommended because African Ethiopia. And I think something should be how this kind of coming together. My question is, as a person or as a research whatever of the university, we have been moving here and there in Europe and Africa and looking, discussing at college and about autonomy. But when it comes to this kind of, it is good to pose some questions. And the both have made some consequences, cell phones, reductions. You see, patterns are important. I think this is something also there is one session which is raising awareness among administrating body. Maybe that also we can say. However, the purpose is autonomy-centered and internationalization. This session here, the terms are really good balanced. You see, internationalization has non-extreme European, African, whatever, global, or is autonomy in Africa is private autonomy, newly growing. See, in that we need something. I have been to Kenya, thank you, Professor. I've been to Catholic University, East Africa, where I have put it care. You see, autonomy and the public awareness is challenging. The parents have looked at is how much autonomy is planted upon the shoulder of public awareness. Finally, students, professors, the nation, collective internationalization are trust, risk, cost. However, to learn from internationalization, to develop autonomy, is communicate public awareness, therefore, this is what we ask. Shared experience is important, particularly for successful autonomous external peace, in Europe, America, Africa, or else. There is comes of also warning realities. For example, men can learn from any Swedish university about autonomy. That is why you don't copy it, come back, exchange the shared experience. What can be done? This is the problem. Then I'm going to the internationalization. I have been in this international office of Esteoule University several years, but only a MOU assigned only on the paper. Flooding to Africa, to Esteoule, to Nairobi, coming back with a signature, then we never heard history of that. Therefore, autonomy in Dakar is awaiting for the internationalization coming for the blue like that is not that much encouraging. And I think let us learn from you and share us what we can do. My thinking is not with the Absaba University or Ethiopia, the right universities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will just then I will let you wait, sir. I will go back to what has been said this morning. Speaking about France Education International Commitment, and just let me give you 2 words on the artist, because in some way it will answer your question, sir. We're not here to give any lessons, actually, to Ethiopian or African universities. We're here to help and helping serve jointly to define a common framework, and I will say of how to meet some today, of how to meet driven internationalization. So, as Professor Peninyaga rightly said, it's not a cookie face what is being doing in the north or whatever Western countries. It's definitely to have clear objectives, but first to have clear objectives on your side. First, you as African Ethiopian partner, you need to have clear objectives of what you want to do. I would say in terms of autonomy, yes, for sure, and for today's conference topic, what you want to do in terms of internationalization process. So you may as France Education International help you in defining methods, in defining not so much objectives, but maybe how to the path to reach those reach out to these objectives. But yes, this is important. I wanted to share this point of view from my institution, and just to open the floor to other discussions. But once again, we want to emphasize today the fact that your reflection, your thinking about how to be driven internationalization must be embedded in your local context, and then you can of course enrich yourself and get experience from abroad, whatever countries it can do. But first, you have to define your own point of view and your own objectives in terms of autonomy and internationalization. Maybe you want to add something to my comment? I can, yeah, that is
Just sometimes example of university look like small identical between Europe and Africa, but among African, between the African university. I speak with Bathily about teaching it's Euro 3 in France, and it's very high in Kenya. We have a specific model, but we can find examples very similar in Africa, either in Europe and Africa, and can share experience. How we manage autonomy, or we deal high autonomy in some countries, North countries, with specific projects, with locally also questions, and by also a method by which we can share for the situation in Ethiopia.
I just wanted to reply to what he said. I think he answered most of the things we were saying, but the change we want has to start within us, and I think Fatou has also mentioned that. But I would mention as sagas, most African universities as sagas. If we need to be autonomous and independent, it's not easy. I want to say it's a process, and a very complex process. Recently, the University of Nairobi reputation almost went down because of this autonomy thing and especially governance. We recently appointed a new vice chancellor, because this is in the media, I'm allowed to say. And why? Because at some point it was political, and being a government university, the ministry felt that they have a say whom we should elect as our vice chancellor, unfortunately. And that's all I'll say is complex. And there was a lot of political back and forth. And so we had one acting VC for a very long time. And this almost cost a stability What am I trying to say? Sometimes it might not be governance within the university, but also governance as a country. Because most of the public universities or GAIL are also under the Ministry of Education. And what we've done as a university, and this is something maybe we need to discuss further as universities in Ethiopia, is that you really need also to engage other stakeholders. Apart from you yourself, governance as a university, as an institution, also the government. And if you see most of the events, most of the discussion, we always invite the Ministry of Education because somehow they find a way of interfering. And so for us to make a good or to be independent as a university, we need to engage them as stakeholders. And sometimes even our staff union say, no, election of leaders, promotion of professors should not be interfered by governance in the country or maybe the Ministry of Education. Also within the universities, governance is very important, and I'm hoping in that session for governance, this will be highlighted for Ethiopian universities and also in Africa in general. Even ourselves, and that's why I said the change has to start with us. Sometimes it comes to promotion. You see cultural things, ethnicity coming in, the gender. So there are a lot of underlying issues that we know where you're seated and me, they're underlying, but they are reality. And they really undermine our autonomy and our independence. And I'm hoping this cultural, socio-cultural, religion, ethnicity can really come out because they are real situations. I've been in the university management. I've met so many of my colleagues who have never been promoted because of one reason or the other, where leadership of departments, faculties is failing because of all these issues. Again, we have to admit these are challenges that are there, but how do we move forward from that? And my hope, Fatou, I think by that day, as we move, we have a clear framework, a clear action plan, how universities in Africa can really be autonomous and also independent amid all these challenges. Thank you.
Definitely, this is what I've been set up. We set up the tone this morning, and to echo is what I've been saying to all our experts have been saying since so far. We want you, after these 3 days spent for us, to have a clear understanding of what kind of process and I would say international strategy you want to put in place in your institution. And so I remind you of the workbook that you all have on each seat that will keep it along. What did you say? Keep it along with you in all the sessions, because definitely it will help you, in defining this process. And I may thanks Ada Peter once again to have designed and elaborated this workbook for us. Thank you. I think we have one or two other questions in this area.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions. One for Yofkati from Nairobi University, which is bunch of ours, and called Great Breaker. Yofkati, maybe because part of the session is riding horizontally, south to south. I know we have a separate session on governance aspect, internationalization, your own aspect. Can you speak a little into how you kind of manage to mainstream international relation at all your schools are in Senegal, and what are the lessons, say like for the US Ethiopia, and for Africa, as we said earlier, part of the internationalization is it that we assume at least our goal is for our graduates to go globally and get hired in companies across the globe. So their country issue of university industry linkage. Ethiopian universities locally had a hard time, have a successful model of university industry linkage. Recently, the government came up with a proclamation to advance or support this linkage between universities and universities. But we are still struggling anyway, because industries are corporate organizations and they don't have time, for about non-outcome-based engagement. So, in that regard, what are lessons, for example, from the French universities, successful lessons that can be adopted to Ethiopian universities as far as university industry linkage is concerned? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just, if I may, for you. You will have full sessions tomorrow and curriculum and employability, and how efficient, I should say, British universities are putting in place partnership and linkage, as you mentioned, with the socioeconomic sectors. But maybe already to do some like vocal advertising of the sessions on stage.
The questions about amorosity.
So linkage between universities and higher education and the socioeconomic.
Alors,
Yes, there is we have sessions, specific sessions. Listen to me or to not? No.
Simon, so I still, and I admit you to participate, and we'll discuss about this progress. It's very important to have curricula with a balance between academic skills, fundamental knowledge, and professionalizations, and toward the employability. And we developed curricula, partnerships, involvement of company. When we discuss the content of the curricula, we have also a special committee which evaluates, advise our professors to include a company subject concerns, and we try to discuss together how to respond to company asset. Expectations. We also develop. We speak about that before other relations. We try to sensibilize, but at the higher levels, students to entrepreneurship, and we perform and establish a diploma of entrepreneurship, a specific diploma for entrepreneurship for other skills. And we also, of course, we work together with socioeconomic actors and academic professors to perform this type of teaching. But we explain more in detail, or first we implement that in this field.
We're catching up for a late schedule, so we will be perfectly on time. So what else would about you is the last question? I think that you wanted to ask a last question, sir? And then we'll conclude. I will take the questions.
Thank you very much. I have one question related to the awareness of the fact in us in this transition. Recently, you may heard that the Minister of Education are evaluating the second round autonomy universities, to be autonomy universities. And I have observed that in the discussion of academic staff, and most use of academic staff around 10 days, the evaluators come say, ask the question about, are you ready for autonomy? And the staff is silent. No one will talk about, and the evaluators insist they won't respond for the instart test. And especially in most of the respondents, some respondents have been replied. They say that especially these days, that the number of students coming to the US are highly increasing in the last 4 years. And instructors are taking the concept of autonomy also as risk, and most of them said, "Well, I don't think we are ready for." And that's the this is I understand on freedom schedules. So one of the aspects is the how this non-fish, especially those staff like us, job and salary is only income, and risk of to us and out of the job, and most my expected I understand that they are affected. So it's also another option that the government wants to have autonomy risk, you know. So I feel that a concept is like the programs are not down to the level of instructors to develop confidence and to have the instructors as part of this transformation process. So this no system can explain that how speedy the number of students are decreasing, and the government, as some of the politics say that they want to differentiate in some programs now in the program of closing due to the students also not choosing of some of the programs. So you do this, and the students, the instructors are afraid of these issues of autonomy. So how the experience, especially African colleagues from Nigeria, Kenya, they have fastered this process. What is their experience to develop offices and what strategies? So I feel that how we can have compensate each and every individual stakeholders in the university and have the same feeling and the same ambitions or the beliefs they can get from this the constant Tony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I may disappoint you, but these issues will be addressed first this afternoon in regard to the internationalization process. Mady Bathily in the session Raising Awareness among administrative executive and Spain's autonomy in the same sense, at the same time about the internationalization of universities. And speaking of the other expert in Catherine Kunentaya and Peter, it will be addressed as well through their presentation. But we keep in mind the fact that, yes, administrative staff must be prepared to the autonomy process, and it goes through training, awareness, and the skills, develop the skills as well. We concluded this first plenary session. First to just take Federi Fleury and had a picture for their presentations. But I have a very last question to you, Federi, which will sum up actually the what I've been saying of this morning. In what ways we'll be speaking about lots of stakeholders, governments, institutions, and communities. Don't forget the options. So in what ways can stakeholders collaborate to redefine the power dynamics in internationalization?
Thank you for these very harsh questions. In fact, we turn around the same problems since the beginning. Autonomy, responsibility, state and university layer, and how to build a strategy and a strategy for internationalization. That I think a part of the questions find answer by two François interventions about how and university is organized with a different level of community, with the governance and the academic community. And on the state side, how balance is found between the autonomy and accountability. And I begin with to be modest, with my modest experience, with the three questions. Is a university president truly aware of all international partnerships and collaboration taking place within its institutions?
Yes or no?
properly.
How would you say?
Sorry, I don't know you, but in my experience with 2,000 research and teacher, it's impossible to very precisely know how the collaboration take place between the community. But it's a question, it's a problem. But you have to build a strategy at the level of the institutions. Second question. Likewise, is the ministry fully aware of all international activity developed across its own university at the state?
It's a side part of the progress.
Third, and the last, do high education institutions and research institutions and ministry have all the necessary tools, governance, structures, organization capacities to identify, monitor, evaluate their international partnerships? Probably not. It's very difficult to have these tools. Who do something on the state level and the institution levels? In many cases, international collaboration remains fragmented, decentralized, and only purposefully visible. This drives the major change in terms of strategic coordinations, data connection, evaluation, risk assessment, and long-term coherence between institutional initiative and national priorities. And I compared to a survey of International Association of Universities. A question asked to the university is, do you have a formal institutional policy strategy in a document? It's the question about worldwide university. The answer: 24% of university among 700 university which responds to a survey. 24%, 24 university institutions have internationalizations embedded in the overall institutional structures. Only 24%. 21% have a stand-alone document about international relations. 31% have an explicit sections within a Word document about the strategy of the university. And 24% of the university have no document about the strategy of internationalizations. And let's show you the way to scale.
Actually, internationalization.
To have the autonomy-centered internationalizations, the true strategy shared by the state and the institution. Because it's not a bottom-up process. It's not you commit academic community with freedom, academic freedom, develop their partnerships and information to work to the ministry. You manage the world better. That is not a bottom-up process. It's not a top-down process because it's impossible for a state to do it. Our policy, our priority is that an academic community must apply these priorities because they are athletic freedom and in fact it's both. It's both a bottom-up and a top-down process with a balance with the priority of the state and what they want to do in internationalizations, in partnerships at the level of the university. And we have to identify different actors within the university. Of course,
grants, which we build the overall strategy at the university level, but with the community. And François mentioned, if the community deems a teacher, researcher on the ground, which do the job on the ground, don't participate in a strategy committee to the thinking, to the reflections, to build the strategy at the university level, it doesn't follow. Then you have to identify and involve all the partners within the university and identify your international partnerships. Of course, have a discussion with the state, with state priority about scientific diplomacy, and taking account global problems that can underline international mobilization, for example, UNESCO, World Bank, which address specific global questions. And I try to show you these different actors in one slide at the level of our institution, the level of a state, and supranational level. And we have to, you have to build your own strategy with your local communities, of course. And this strategy is different between institutions within a state, and is different between different states and different parts of the world. When we are identifying the different actors, and you have to choose these actors, if it's not fair, it's you have not equitability in the partnerships, you have to suppress the partnerships. And it's not so easy because you have to take into account the partnerships, international partnerships of the community, but to take at the university level. And at the end, this is good for university and all community of graphic change. And after you have a discussion of a state with the state. And in the two-way discussions, two directions, state cannot build an international strategy without higher education and research institutions. Because one time more, it's researcher and teacher on the ground which develop partnerships. And state, by the means of a commerce, of a university and academic community, don't have to use this kind of partnerships. And also state at its own priorities about scientific diplomacy, history, in a relationship between different states. And we have to build together, state and institutions, a strategy which can be a law for us to be at both time autonomy and accountable to a state about different priorities. And this is a ideally process. And ideally, but have you seen the answer to my question at the beginning? It's not so easy to speak. It's not easy to do. And we share the same difficulty. But ideally, the state was have good information to begin to build a strategy, include its own priorities, and the institutions take into account the state strategy to apply and to develop with academic freedom. And this is a very dynamic process, and it changes over the time because state can change about some priorities, and of course, within the university, the partnerships change model often. And it's a theory process and a synergy, a kind of synergy between state policy and academic freedom of university.
Well, thank you. Thank you. These will be the last words. So just
to give you some organizational information. So you'll have the lunch right outside. You're invited to buffet lunch right outside the boardroom session. Please be back at 10 minutes before 2 for the presentation of the breakout session. It's going for you for us. It's totally for you to give you just a very light, but a very short presentation on the breakout sessions. So be back 2 minutes before 2 for this very quick presentation. Thank you for your attention, and once again, thanks to all our panelists of this morning's session.